This is Hannibal here with my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. There's a lot of news this week, so let's jump right into it. As we already reported last week, Afa Noah, the patriarch of the Samoan dynasty, passed away last Friday at the age of 81. Less than 2 months after his longtime partner, Sika, the father of Roman Reigns, passed away. Afa was The Rock's uncle as far as what The Rock posted. Former WWE wrestler, AAA wrestler, and UFC champion Cain Velasquez pleaded no contest to an attempted murder charges, as well as 9 other charges related to shooting at someone that was believed to have molested his 4-year-old son. He entered this plea on August 16th. His trial was supposed to begin September 9th. Originally, he was not going to be released on parole, but he ended up being released on $1 million bond, which allowed him to train people at the American Kickboxing Academy. And he wrestled one AAA wrestling match and has apparently cornered some MMA fighters. The whole situation was he fired shots, basically had a high-speed chase with Harry Goularte Jr., who hasn't been found guilty yet, but is believed to have molested his son. He ended up hitting a guy named Paul Bender with gunshots, non-life-threatening gunshots. Bender was in the car with Goulart, who well, he knew the alleged child molester apparently had nothing to do with it. So basically, I think the main issue was that because this was a high-speed thing and shots were being fired all over the place, other people were being put into danger. And apparently they found on his cell phone he had searched revenge killing and child molester situations, what the punishment was, and the police found that, which kind of showed that it was premeditated. He is facing a maximum of 40 years and 4 months in prison. And he already did spend some time in jail, so that minimum he could be facing just probation and no additional custody time, which I'm sure is what he was hoping for with this no contest plea. Bobby Lashley, another crossover UFC WWE guy who has said he had no relationship with Triple H. Triple H never sat down to talk to him or anything. Basically, he's a free agent now. He's talking to some boxing promoters. There's obviously a lot of rumors about him in AEW. He's also interested in going back in MMA. Pat McAfee won't be back calling WWE until January due to college football. Steve Austin has said he was very close to appearing at WrestleMania 40 and is interested in appearing UFC 225 in Las Vegas. Steve Austin also pleaded not guilty no contest to basically beating his wife, and received a fine, probation, and community service, which I believe was the reason why. And I'm saying it again, this is just hearsay, but I believe the whole reason why his match with Kevin Owens was not advertised was because they were concerned if they advertised in a feature match, Steve Austin, people would look up his past and possibly try and cancel the match, which would have made it a huge deal. Whereas if they just canceled an interview, no one really would have said much. But that's just my theory. It's unfortunate. I thought that was all just hearsay with Austin and Deborah until I actually looked it up. But it's funny, and some people have commented on it. More people got on Hulk Hogan's case about saying the N-word than a case where a wife was beaten. So for whatever reason, that's the situation. Speaking of Hulk Hogan, he did have an issue at a Hulk Hogan beer event over the weekend. Some people said he threw a beer that hit a 50-year-old in the face, causing 9 stitches. He did say on the microphone he was throwing beers, and apparently at other events he had been throwing beers out, but there was no video or evidence indicating it was him that threw the actual beer that injured the person. It could have been one of his staff, but nobody was charged in the situation. Julia is done in Japan and is expected to be starting with WWE soon. Stephanie Valker from Mexico is waiting for her visa to come through before she can start. She already had matches in Mexico where she wouldn't have needed a visa. WWE did their only 2 U.S. house shows of the summer this weekend. They've cut way back on house shows. August 17th in Lakeland, Florida, they drew 4,086, including comps. August 17th was in Lakeland, where the famous match between Bruiser Brody and Lex Luger took place all those years ago. In the Fort Myers area the next night, they did 4,835. So for everyone that keeps acting like we're back in the Attitude Era or the golden 1980s era, no, more people fly in for the pay-per-view events. They advertise them a year out. I've recently heard that the Pontiac Silverdome event was actually only announced like 6 or 7 weeks before. So it was, in the past, it was very localized people that would be able to fill up stadiums. Now to fill a stadium, people travel to them. It's still very impressive that they can fill stadiums. It's very impressive how much money they're making. But let's face the facts here. Back in the Hulk Hogan days, they were getting way more than 4,000 people at house shows. And they were running 3 house shows a night. Granted, yes, the C shows would be in much smaller venues and feature much lower stars, but still, there used to be pretty much 7 days a week, 3 shows a night. Now there's more international ways to make money. But I don't think any people can argue that since The Rock stopped appearing in WWE, which obviously it's going to get better when Cena gets back and The Rock gets back and the Netflix era begins. But right now, it's nowhere near as hot as it was during WrestleMania season. Which again, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just sick of people act. When was the last? Even I've heard Dave Meltzer say this. When was the last time? Like, you don't go to shopping malls now or the grocery store and see Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes shirts anywhere. I'm not saying they're not over, but they're nowhere near as over as the NWO in Austin were. You would go out in the 90s and see their shirts everywhere. In the 80s, one of the reasons me as a kid liked wrestling, the toys were everywhere in the toy stores. And you saw the shirts everywhere. Like, it was very easy to get drawn to it. And yes, maybe I'm biased because I was a kid during those eras and I find wrestling not entertaining now, other than the behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, someone doesn't blame Cain for the alleged situation. I mean, yeah, I mean the blame game there. I mean, no one can blame them. Like, honestly, I mean, if someone did that to a family member of mine, or if someone hurt a family member of mine, I would probably want to do the same thing. But I think one of the main situations in the Cain Velasquez thing, John, is that so many other people were put in danger by the way that he went about it. And I'm not condoning what he tried to do, but he didn't even end up hitting the guy that did it with the gun. It was someone else that got shot, and all these people were put in danger. And the guy that did the alleged molestation, nothing ended up happening to him. AEW Collision and Rampage in Arlington last week did 1,200 fans, including comps. Apparently, the costs were kept down through this series of events in Arlington. Some shows had more fans than other, but the shows did not come across as like big on TV, and having no elevated seats, pretty much all the seats were on the floor, gave the impression of a small crowd, which they were small crowds, but it's I mean, I've rented some big arenas before, and they're like, and this I haven't rented a big arena for over 10 years to put on a Great North Wrestling event, but you're looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars unless they're paying you a site fee to come in, which they do in a lot of cases with WWE and UFC, where they'll let you have the arena for free. But like, you're talking over at least, at very least, over $20,000 or $30,000, as much as closer to $100,000 just to rent a big arena. So that can't help AEW's financial losses to go to these massive arenas and get like 2,000 people or less sometimes in 20,000 seat arenas. Like, just think of the labor it takes from the union workers to put all that black tarp over all the empty seats. That costs money. AEW, which already has 1 million belts, has been emphasizing Ring of Honor titles more on AEW television. I don't understand why Tony Khan even bothers with Ring of Honor, trying to make it a separate brand. It's the same brand. Pretty much everyone crosses over. The titles are defended on AEW shows. The only difference between Ring of Honor and AEW is people leave the arenas when they say it's a Ring of Honor tapings are starting. So why not just make it all AEW? And at one point, he was talking about calling it AEW's Ring of Honor. Why even keep the brand going? I don't get it. I really don't get it, but it's his prerogative. Including comps, there's about 48,000 tickets out for the Wembley show this weekend. Last year, I think they had 83,000. Apparently, they'll be happy if they can get 50,000 in the building. They say tickets distributed, so obviously they're papering it as well. Bryan Danielson noted he's on the creative team and disciplinary committee behind the scenes in AEW. However, he said, quote, "I help Tony with creative, but it's still mostly Tony's ideas in AEW," end quote. There's still no estimated on time for Kenny Omega's return. Saraya, a.k.a. Paige's contract, is supposedly up soon. I'd be shocked if WWE wanted her back. They weren't using her much in the last time she was under contract in WWE. She's basically sitting at home getting paid. And she hasn't had much buzz in AEW. So I could see her re-signing with AEW. She didn't really move numbers at all in AEW. It was another person that people recognize, but honestly, I don't. She's not over in AEW nearly as much as she was in Paige's WWE. But she was having sex with people backstage in WWE and making videos with belts and stuff, getting double teamed on camera, and all the abuse stuff that happened with Alberto Patron, which apparently I'm no expert in it, but apparently there was a lot of controversy in that. And I'm not saying Alberto said she was abusing him. So take that for what it's worth. I don't think he was ever found guilty of anything. But she was a lot of backstage baggage in WWE. The New Japan G1 Climax Tournament Finals had 5,340 the first night in Sumo Hall. And for the final night in Sumo Hall, 8,000. Those are not good numbers for something that used to be sold out. Mexico's actually doing better than New Japan. There was a CML regular show at Arena Mexico that was actually down from the regular fans, 8,500 on August 16th. Triple Mania August 17th by AAA, 15,800. Apparently that show was not very good according to Meltzer. Alberto Alpatron won the main title from Nick Nemeth. Here's one thing I don't understand about Nick Nemeth. I mean, Impact gave him their title. AAA gave them their title. At one point, he held an New Japan title. He was a jobber his last few years in WWE. Why do they expect putting a title on him? Someone that was viewed as a jobber in WWE is going to increase business after he's done with WWE. I don't know. I got nothing against him, but I just don't understand that mentality. UFC got a big site fee for coming to Australia as part of a multi-year deal. They had a show there last week. 14,152 fans, over a 5 million US gate. Their first block of prelims did a 0.33 rating in the US. The second block, 0.42. So again, still not as high as WWE ratings for the prelims, but much better than AEW ratings. AEW was down in viewership for their Go Home Dynamite show this week, by the way. Here's something interesting. Back when I was in my last few years of high school, they were talking about wrestling going out of the Olympics. Places like Syracuse were dropping their wrestling program. There wasn't much hope for amateur wrestling. Now it seems to be more popular than ever. This past season, the University of Iowa averaged 14,846 fans per show. Penn State averaged 7,333. Iowa State averaged 6,692. Oklahoma averaged 5,871. Oregon averaged 5,240. North Carolina State, 4,341. Michigan, 4,196. Ohio State, 4,072. Rutgers, 3,990. Missouri at 3,394. I mean, those are better numbers than AEW gets. I mean, that's amazing. Someone is talking about how much they loved the 80s and 90s wrestling. I really liked the 80s was my favorite era. Honestly, I like WCW for whatever reason more than WWE in the 90s. But now I'm lucky if I can get through the highlights of the show. But the backstage stuff I still find interesting, which, by the way, the other thing I reported on the news last night is for some reason they're like in damage control because it got out that Britt Baker was suspended and fined for talking behind MJF's back, bad stuff behind the scenes in AEW, which MJF's girlfriend ratted her out for. Will Ospreay saying it was blown out of proportion. Well, if it was something so minor, why was she suspended and fined for it? But to me, as I'm coughing my lungs out here, why don't they do angles out of this backstage stuff that people are talking about more than the real angles? I mean, that's what Vince Russo said. He always mix in the real stuff. It makes things more interesting. To me, there's no real interesting angles going on in AEW right now. For instance, one of the things that's going on, everyone wants Jericho to retire. I understand why he's not going to retire. He's making more money than ever. Easy job. Like what? Why not bring that more as an angle? The fans wanting Jericho to retire. Maybe they will. Anyways, hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I'm checking out of here. Please like this video and subscribe to the Hannibal TV.